That day was my birthday. 24 years old. I was working a 12-hour shift at Northridge Medical Center. I had just set a tray of medication down on the counter when my phone buzzed. A text popped up. Just one sentence. But it tore my chest wide open. Sold the car. Family comes first. Be grateful we still let you stay here for free. My father, Ronald Morgan. I froze in the middle of the hospital hallway, under the cold, sterile lights glaring down onto the white floor. That Toyota Corolla was the only asset I had. 2 years of working extra shifts, 3 months of living on instant noodles, and 6 times turning down friends' invitations to go out. I had bought it with my own sweat from my nursing job. No warning, no asking, no discussion. They sold it. Then, right after, a second text came in. Jason's first semester tuition is $6,200. You handle it. Due Friday. Jason, my half-brother. The golden child in Ronald and Marcia's eyes was Marcia, my stepmother, whose voice dripped sweet like syrup, but whose eyes were as sharp as a razor's edge. I leaned back against the hallway wall, my hand gripping the phone tightly. My heart pounded hard, as if every breath I had ever fought to take in my life was now betraying me. If you've ever had your family take away something you worked so hard for, just to hand it over to the child they spoil, you'll understand. I didn't just lose a car. I lost the last bit of trust I had in the 2 people who always said, "This is for the family." If you've gone through anything like I have, leave a comment below. Follow the Revenge Mark channel, where those who were once silent now speak out. We are not alone. My name is Haley Morgan. I live in Boulder, Colorado, and I'm going to tell you how I went from the dutiful daughter to the one who exposed her family on the front page. I remember clearly the night before my birthday. My stepmother, Marcia, said it so lightly, almost like a breeze, when I asked if I could take the next day's shift off early to have dinner with a few friends. Do you think you really have anything worth celebrating? Jason's about to start college. Maybe we should focus on his future instead of some meaningless party. That sentence, along with the pitying look and the little chuckle they shared, felt like a slap straight across my face. On the morning of my birthday, there was no cake, no card, no happy birthday. I left the house at 6:30 a.m. The car was still there, parked in the driveway, quiet and still. I didn't know it would be the last time I'd ever see it. During my lunch shift, Brianna, my close coworker, brought over a tiny cupcake with a single little candle. Make a wish. She smiled softly. I almost cried. My heart was already so worn out, but at least someone still saw that I existed. And then that text came. Right there in the hospital. Right there, among the children waiting for their shots, were the young mothers filled with worry. And I just stood there, stripped bare, hollowed out, shattered from the inside. So all those years of burying myself in school, in work, in sacrifice, just so I could be treated like a walking wallet. Family comes first to them. Family meant Jason. And me, I was just a convenience, a debtor of gratitude. But they were wrong about one thing. I wasn't a child they could manipulate anymore. That evening, I walked into a house as quiet as every other night. The smell of grilled meat filled the kitchen. The table was already set with fine china, an odd, calculated kind of arrangement. Ronald didn't even look up from the sofa when I came in. Car are sold, buyer paid cash, just in time for Jason's tuition. I hadn't said a word yet, but in my mind, a plan had already begun. Did they think I would just nod along like I always did this time? They were wrong. I didn't sit down at the table that day. I didn't touch the roasted meat. I didn't say a word. I just stood there, frozen like a shadow. The car had been sold. The money I'd been saving for my first apartment was about to be forced into Jason's college account. And the three of them were just sitting there, having dinner as if there was nothing worth mentioning. Ronald poured more water into his glass. Marcia sliced a piece of birthday cake just for fun. Jason played with his phone, chuckling every now and then. And me? I didn't see myself there. Not in anyone's eyes. Not in the dinner plans. Not in the conversation. Not in anyone's heart at that table. That car was for the family to get by, Ronald said evenly. Jason's about to start college, and tuition isn't cheap. You should know better. Jason looked up and shrugged. I thought you agreed. Dad said so. Thanks in advance. I almost laughed. Thought they had taken it, then expected me to be grateful for being allowed to stay here for free. They didn't need my agreement at all. They only needed me to stay silent like every other time. For the past 7 years, I'd been living under an unspoken contract, paying rent, buying groceries, covering the utility bills, fixing the plumbing when Ronald was too busy, playing golf. Everything I did was wrapped up in one phrase they loved to use. You should feel lucky you still get to live in this house. That house was never a home, just a place where I paused, swallowed my anger, and kept going. A roof over my head with walls covered in Jason's high school graduation photos, and not a single picture of me since I was 15. I stepped away from the table and went out to the backyard. The night wind cut cold against my skin. Marcia followed, wearing a knit cardigan and holding a cup of tea. Haley, don't be so upset, she said softly. We're family. You have a job. You have money. Surely you can help your little brother a bit. I looked at her, my eyes empty. A bit. That was my car. It was everything I had. Your dad said he added his name to the title when he took it for inspection. You signed it. Remember, I remembered. That day, I was rushing to work. Ronald handed me a paper, saying it was just a registration renewal. I signed it without looking. It was clear to me now. This wasn't a mistake. It was a plan, premeditated, prepared. Marcia set her teacup on the chair's armrest. You've always been the thoughtful daughter. Unlike your real mother, she didn't finish the sentence. I turned back toward her. I caught a flicker of regret in her eyes, but it was too late. My mother being gone doesn't mean I don't have anyone to protect me. She opened her mouth, but I had already walked inside. That night, I lay in my room. I could hear Ronald snoring, Jason playing video games, and Marcia talking on the phone with someone. The room was so quiet I could hear the blood rushing in my temples. My heartbeat was no longer patient. It was boiling. Not just because of the car, not just because of $6,200, but because they thought I wouldn't do anything, that I was just a wallet with a pulse. Around 3:00 a.m., I switched on the light. I pulled open the drawer and took out my old papers, the car title, the tuition transfer receipt, my nursing degree, the scholarship letter that had once been taken away from me. I began gathering each piece, a life slowly shaved away, corner by corner. Every trace was buried under the dust of what they called family. I still didn't know exactly what I was going to do, but I knew one thing for sure. They would not take anything more from me, and this time, I would not stay silent. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual, not to get ready for work, but because my heart wouldn't let me sleep any longer. It wasn't beating steadily anymore. It pounded like a warning drum. Something inside me had broken, and something else had risen to take its place. Beneath the mask of the good, obedient daughter, I could feel myself burning. No more wanting to avoid. No more wanting to understand them. I just wanted to take back what belonged to me. I sat at the corner of my small desk, the same spot where I once crammed for my nursing exams under that old desk lamp. On the desk now were, the original car purchase contract has my name on it. Receipts for every month I'd paid the utility bills. Transfers I'd made to the family under the label of contribution. I gathered each item, arranged them. They weren't just papers. They were evidence. Because this time, I wasn't just going to leave quietly. I was going to leave thunder in my wake. At 10:00 a.m., Ronald banged on my bedroom door. "Haley, I'm asking you straight. When are you going to transfer Jason's tuition? Friday's the deadline." I opened the door, my face emotionless. "I'm not paying Jason's tuition." He looked at me like I'd just announced I was going to burn the house down. "That's not for you to decide. He's your brother. He's family. And family sacrifices for each other." "What family?" Dad, I asked back. My voice so calm it startled even me. "I'm the only one paying for anything here. But when you sold my car, you didn't need to ask." He tightened his voice. "I'm on the title too. I have the right." I nodded. "Then let's see what the law thinks." Ronald froze for half a second, then let out a laugh. "You're going to sue your own father, not my father." I looked straight into his eyes, just a man who taught me that no one will protect me except me. That night at dinner, no one said a word. Jason kept his head down, maybe for the first time feeling how tense the air could get in this house. Marcia set the table like everything was normal. I sat down, took bites of food in silence. My mind was making a list. I needed bank statements, the scholarship documents that were taken from me years ago, my nursing school tuition receipts. I needed to document every time they'd asked me to help, every responsibility that only I was expected to carry. I needed weapons. That night, I called Rachel, a fellow nurse. She had once mentioned that an apartment near the hospital had a vacant unit at a decent price. "Rachel, quick question. Is that place still available? I need to move. This week?" There was a pause on the other end. "What happened?" "Haley," I swallowed. The answer didn't need to be long. "Family." Around midnight, I went downstairs for some water. I found Ronald sitting alone, his back to the window. In his hand was a paper, an application for Jason's tuition assistance loan. My car keys were in the corner of the table, no longer mine. I didn't say anything, didn't greet him, just glanced at him briefly, then walked away. I didn't need noise to start a fight. I just needed enough hurt. The next morning, I put on my scrubs and slung my backpack over my shoulder as usual. But this time, inside my backpack was the entire stack of documents I was taking to a lawyer. I also had an appointment with attorney Heather Quinn, a woman who specialized in cases like mine. Heather Quinn sat behind a glossy wooden desk, her file open, eyes studying me intently. She wasn't in a hurry. She wasn't impatient. She simply waited in silence until I could get the first words out. I had prepared myself, but my mouth still went dry when I had to say, "They're my family." But they took everything. Heather didn't blink. "Haley, start from the beginning. I'll listen to everything." And I told her, every detail, every time. My scholarship was taken away, every gift from relatives that was kept for me. The car I bought was with my own hard-earned money, sold behind my back. And now, they were demanding $6,200 more for Jason's tuition. Heather nodded, jotting down a few lines. Do you have the documents? I unzipped my backpack and pulled out each folder, a copy of the car purchase agreement. A photo of the original registration only has my name on it. The new one has Ronald's forged signature. Her brows furrowed as she examined that part closely. This signature, you can tell right away it's not real. And this is a property transaction. This kind of forgery is a criminal offense. I clasped my hands together lightly. I don't want to take my parents to court, but I can't just let this go. Heather looked up. Her eyes held no judgment, only resolve. You are not the one at fault. You're a victim of a system twisted under the guise of family loyalty. We will proceed according to the law. No rush, no letting emotions take over. After nearly an hour of working together, she laid out the plan clearly. First, send a formal demand letter to Ronald and Marcia, requesting repayment of the car's value. Second, inform them of the forgery and give them the opportunity to cooperate before moving to civil litigation. Third, prepare a complete case file in the event we have to take it to court. I sat quietly for a moment. What do you think? They'll do panic, deny, then try to make you feel guilty. But you have evidence. You have the right. And this time, you're not alone. When I left the office, it was still not yet noon. Cold wind swept along Denver's boulevard, but I felt warmer than usual. Not because someone was protecting me, but because, for the first time, I had begun to protect myself. I walked back toward the hospital. When the familiar roofline of North Ridge Medical Center came into view, I felt as if I were returning to a safe place. The afternoon shift hadn't started yet. I took the chance to stop by the cafeteria. Maya was getting coffee, and when she saw me, she walked over. What's going on? You look like you just came back from a battlefield. I gave a small smile. Not wrong. Just came from my lawyer's office. Her eyes widened. Wow, you actually did it? I nodded. I did. And I've never felt so right about anything. That evening, I tidied up my room, not to make it spotless, but to start packing, even though they hadn't thrown me out yet. I knew that day would come. On my desk, I left a copy of the demand letter Heather would be sending that week. Alongside a short line, I will not stay silent anymore. There was no shouting, no scene of things being smashed, not a single immediate text from Ronald. Just, the house had become too quiet. Tuesday morning, I woke up as usual, made coffee, got ready for work. My mind was calm as if I hadn't just dropped a bomb on their so-called home. Heather had sent the letter at 6:43 a.m. yesterday, by email, then by FedEx, ensuring someone had to sign for it. The content was brief, sharp, no emotional wording, just facts, just the law, just a clear demand, full reimbursement for the value of the car that had been illegally sold, or face litigation and a criminal investigation for document forgery. Deadline to respond 7 business days. I came home that evening like any other day. Ronald was sitting in the living room. An open beer bottle was on the table. The TV was on, but nobody was watching. Marcia was folding laundry in the kitchen, her hands trembling but pretending nothing was wrong. "Hi, honey," she said without looking up. I didn't respond, just went straight to my room. 10 minutes later, Ronald knocked on my door. Not hard, but firm. I opened it. "You really called a lawyer?" he asked, his voice hoarse, a mix of anger and fear. "I didn't call. I hired. A stretch of silence hung between us. Then he clenched his teeth. You're really going to drag the whole family's name through the mud over a damn car? I looked at him without blinking. It's not about the car. It's about how you took it. That night, Jason knocked on my door. Is it true? Dad forged your signature. I didn't answer right away. Just handed him the photocopy Heather had included. He looked at it. His face slowly went pale. I thought you agreed. I thought. It was all for me. It's not your fault. I whispered. The fault lies with the adults who choose to swallow everything and call it family. If you've ever been made the scapegoat simply because you seem stronger, hit subscribe to Revenge Mark. Here, your story will be heard. The next day, I got an email from Heather. Ronald had responded in the form of a rebuttal, denying any wrongdoing, but the wording was awkward and inconsistent. Signs he was scrambling to spin the situation. Be ready for the next step, she wrote. I wasn't afraid. I had come too far to turn back. That night, I began my second round of cleaning, not to tidy up material things, but to free myself from all emotional ties. I opened the old wooden box where I kept my most important belongings. Inside were still there a photo of my biological mother, an old handwritten letter she had once written to me, and the pair of earrings she gave me before she passed. I placed them on the table and looked at them for a long time. It felt like being hugged by her once more. As I was getting ready for bed, Marcia's voice came from outside my door. Haley, your dad is getting angry. If this blows up, no one will be on your side. I didn't answer, just sighed. Then wrote the final line in my notebook. I don't need anyone to be on my side. I just need to stand firm. The following afternoon, when I had just finished my shift and stepped into the house, the atmosphere in the living room felt completely different. Ronald was on the phone, his voice so loud it echoed all the way to the hallway. I could hear every single word, even though he had no idea I was home. She's mentally unstable. She's had a history of depression. If this goes to court, I'll make sure the whole town knows how unfit she is. I stood still behind the not fully closed door. I didn't step inside. I didn't walk away. I just listened. Those weren't the words of a father. Those were the words of a man building a wall of fire around himself, ready to burn down anyone who dared to come near. When he hung up, I stepped out. So I'm mentally unstable. Is that it? I asked. Ronald was startled but quickly regained his composure. I'm just saying whatever it takes to protect the family, or just to protect yourself. He didn't answer. Marcia walked in from the kitchen carrying a tray of drinks. I could clearly see she had heard the whole thing, but like every other time, she chose to see nothing. Haley, you need to understand, Marcia said. When this gets out, you'll lose a lot too. Not just gain. I'm not trying to gain anything. I replied evenly. I just want to keep what's mine. 3 days later, I got an email from Heather's office. Ronald had sent an official response letter, along with a statement saying I was slandering him, showing signs of mental instability and not financially capable of keeping the car. They were preparing a countersuit if we continued to push. I read those words over and over again. Cold. Calculated. There was no trace of anything you could call family love anymore. That night, I went back to my room, opened my notebook, and wrote down a single line. If they think I'm weak, then this time, they're going to have to relearn exactly who I am. The next morning, Ronald didn't have breakfast with everyone. Jason couldn't even look me in the eye. Only Marcia sat there, spooning her cereal. acting as if it were just another normal day. "Do you think you might be destroying something you actually need?" she asked. "What do you mean, family?" I set my spoon down. Family shouldn't be a place where you have to pretend you're not hurting. It shouldn't be a place where people can take everything from you, then expect you to smile and say, "I understand." Around the same time, at the hospital, the rumors started spreading. A nurse from the surgery department whispered as I walked past, "I heard Miss Morgan's got some legal mess with her parents." I turned and looked her straight in the eyes. Not afraid. Not ashamed. "If you want to know the truth, I'm happy to tell you. But if you're just going to whisper behind my back, don't waste your time." She flushed red and looked away. I knew. Ronald had already started calling people he knew, trying to smear my reputation before the truth could come out. This wasn't just a defensive reaction anymore. This was an active war. That night, just as I turned off the light to sleep, an envelope slid under my bedroom door. No address. No sender. I opened it. Inside was a printed document, a withdrawal form for my legal claim, with the signature line already filled in. I sat up. The light came back on. My hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but because I realized they didn't just want to take my car, my money, my dignity. Now they were trying to take my voice as well. I brought the withdrawal of lawsuit form to Heather's office first thing the next morning. "Good," she said, tilting the paper toward the light. "This is a big mistake on their part." I frowned. "What do you mean they wanted to scare you? But they left a trail. If we compare this signature with the previous documents, it will only strengthen the forgery argument. More evidence, not less." I sat down, feeling my heartbeat slow for the first time. "So, this could end sooner." Heather shook her head, but her eyes softened. "Sooner, not necessarily, but winning, I believe so. Absolutely. And you will never have to bow your head again." That evening, when I got home, I saw Ronald standing on the porch. He had his hands in his pockets. His face was unreadable, neither angry nor tired. "You're back," he said, without turning around. "Yes." Marcia said, "You might be moving out soon." "Yes. I'm looking for the right place." He was silent for a moment, then asked, "Do you need me to help with anything?" I turned to look at him. "Do you want to help because you actually feel guilty or because you're afraid of being sued?" He didn't answer. I didn't wait. I stepped inside. The next day, I sent an official notice terminating my financial contributions to household expenses, utilities, and groceries, along with copies of all the payments I had made up until now, sent by email, CC'd directly to Heather, proof that I no longer had any financial obligation. Also, my way of declaring I'm no longer the one keeping this house running. Jason called me at 9:17 p.m. I picked up. "Sis, I don't even know what to say." "You don't have to say anything. Just understand what's going on." His voice lowered. "I'm exhausted. Mom keeps crying. Dad keeps yelling. The whole house is in chaos. Welcome to my world. Jason, I've been living like that for 6 years. Nobody noticed." A pause. Then he spoke again. So softly I almost didn't hear him. If I wanted to apologize? Is it too late? I closed my eyes. My chest is tight. It wasn't forgiveness. It was just the first time someone in this family named my pain. The next day, I arrived at the hospital earlier than usual. In my bag was a letter from Heather. I sent it to Ronald's legal team, formally rejecting the accusations about my mental state. Attached was confirmation from the hospital's HR department I was under review for a promotion next month. A direct hit to the very point he had tried to smear. That afternoon, Valerie Ronald's younger sister called me, the only woman in the family who had never pretended not to know what was going on. "Haley, are you all right?" Her voice warm, genuine. I told her the truth. "I'm tired, but I'm standing. Auntie, they're trying to turn me into the crazy one." She sighed. "Your dad's been shouting at relatives. Your stepmom locked herself in her room, crying all day. People are starting to ask questions. Finally, they're seeing the part you've been carrying." That night, I lay in my room, the desk lamp casting light over a stack of documents. Everything is still messy, but inside, I heard something quiet. Not peace, just not alone anymore. I wrote in my notebook, "When the first light breaks through, it's when the darkness starts to fade." The call from HR came at 2:34 p.m., right in the middle of me dressing the wound of a 2-year-old patient. I excused myself to step outside and answer, "Haley, I'm so sorry, but your promotion nomination has just been put on hold." I froze. "Why?" "An anonymous letter was sent to the board, saying you have a history of mental instability and that you were hospitalized back in college." I couldn't speak for a few seconds. "We don't believe that's true, but the procedure requires us to conduct an internal investigation." I hung up. I didn't cry. I didn't breathe heavily. I just stood still, in my head. One name spun around like a knife being twisted in reverse. Ronald. That night, I came home later than usual. The house was silent. Jason wasn't in his room. Marcia was nowhere to be seen either. Only Ronald, sitting in the dark living room, holding a glass of liquor. "I heard you're having some trouble at the hospital," he said. I didn't answer. Sometimes, when someone rushes too fast toward justice, they forget that everything can shatter in their own hands. I stepped closer. "Did you send that anonymous letter? Do you have proof?" He smirked, as if this was just another game he knew all too well. Marcia came home around 10 p.m. The moment she stepped through the door, she stopped when she saw me standing in the hallway. "Where were you all day?" "Mom," I asked, "your father said I should stay away while you're still agitated." I frowned. "And you just went along with that." She lowered her head. "Haley, this has gone too far. All I want is to keep a roof over our heads, keep it intact." I almost laughed. "What's intact here?" "Mom, everything is built on lies and coercion. At 11:20 p.m., I got a text from Jason. I'm staying at a friend's for a few days. Can't stand the atmosphere in the house anymore. Dad locked your room. I told Mom it was to protect the family's assets." I froze. I rushed upstairs. My room was, in fact, locked from the outside. I knocked hard. No one answered. I called Ronald. The line was busy. I called Marcia. Phone off. I stood in the hallway, my heart pounding, my clothes, my documents, my laptop, my lawyer's files, Mom's pictures. Everything was in there. An old feeling rose up in my throat. The feeling of being locked out of my own life. I didn't scream. I didn't pound on the door. I just stepped back and looked at that door as if I was looking at someone who had betrayed me all over again. I walked back to the living room where Ronald was still sitting. The glass was lower now. His eyes were just as cold. "You've crossed the line," I said. "You don't have any boundaries anymore. Haley, you burned them yourself. You're trying to strip me of everything. You think I'll give up?" He shrugged. "I think, in the end, you're just a lone nurse living under this roof. And you should be grateful you still have a place to come home to. I looked at him. You're wrong. I don't live off you. I've paid far too much, for far too long, just to call this living together. I left the house that very night. Valerie picked me up at the parking lot near the old supermarket. When I got in the car, without saying a word, she simply took my hand. I broke down crying, not out of fear, but because I knew. I had just officially lost the house I once called home. I stayed over at Aunt Valerie's house that night, not really sleeping, more like lying there, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. Every sound in my head felt muted. No anger, no tears. Just one question echoing over and over, like a knock coming from deep inside my chest. Did I go too far? The next morning, Aunt Valerie made me a cup of tea. She didn't ask. She didn't give advice. She just set it down gently on the table. Just sit still. I'll talk to the hospital, she said. I nodded. But inside, I wasn't still at all. That entire day, I didn't go to the hospital. I called in and took the day off. For the first time in 3 years of working as a nurse, I asked for a personal day without giving any details. The person on the other end hesitated. I knew they had started to suspect something, and I also knew that anonymous letter had already left a nail driven deep into the heart of the organization. That afternoon, I opened my laptop, intending to start drafting a response. But I sat in front of the screen for nearly half an hour, unable to type a single word. Every time I placed my hands on the keyboard, old words came flooding back. Family is the last place you've got. You're living here for free. Without you, we'd still be fine. And then, the image of Ronald, his cold face, as I was kicked out of my own room. No pain, no anger, just emptiness. That evening, Jason texted me, Dad just told the relatives that you've been mentally unstable since college. People are starting to talk. I don't know what to do. I typed back, you don't need to do anything. Just stay quiet. Don't defend me. Don't take sides. I can handle it myself. But the moment I hit send, my chest felt heavy, because I knew I couldn't handle it anymore. Valerie came home late and saw me sitting in front of the computer, eyes red and swollen. Haley, is there anything I can do to make it easier for you to breathe? She asked. I shook my head. Auntie, I don't even know if I'm right or wrong anymore. I thought I was strong, but why does it feel so empty inside me now? She sat down beside me, her voice gentle. You're hurt. Badly. And that's the truth. That's not weakness. I laughed. But it wasn't a happy laugh. But what if I fail? What if everyone believes them and not me? What if the hospital starts to doubt me, too? Then you still have you, and you're not alone. You have me. You have the truth. And you have a part of your heart. Even though it's cracked right now, it's still alive, and it will get strong again. That night, I wrote everything down and did not send it to the lawyer. But to hold on to myself, I wrote as if I were telling it to another Haley in the future. Someone who would look back and know she didn't fall apart. Before going to bed, I stepped out onto the small balcony. The Colorado night air was cold, but not as cold as the chill of being pushed out by your own parents. I looked toward the old row of houses where I used to live, not praying they would change, not hoping for a day to go back, just whispering one sentence. That's enough. Monday morning, I received a message from Maya, a colleague at the hospital. We know what happened. A few of us. We believe you. Don't withdraw your promotion application. Don't quit your job. You're not alone. I read that message over and over again. Normally, just a few lines like that. I would scroll past. But today, it hit me. It struck right into that empty space I thought would never be filled again. At 9:10 a.m., Valerie knocked on my door. She was holding a cup of coffee and a printed sheet of paper. You've got a letter from the hospital. HR has received your lawyer's response, confirming that the medical record was fabricated. They have temporarily suspended all internal investigations. I stared blankly at the bold print. I didn't jump for joy. I didn't cheer. I just felt my chest grow a little lighter. I held the paper in my hands. I held it for a long time, as if I were hugging a piece of my dignity that had just been pulled back from the edge. Valerie placed her hand on my shoulder, her eyes warm. See, no matter how deep the bottom is, even a small vine can pull you back up. I nodded slightly. Auntie, I'm not angry anymore. I just want to make everything clear. Not because of hatred, but because I need a proper ending. Have you ever had your voice strangled within your own family? Don't stay silent forever. Subscribe to Revenge, Mark. Here, your pain will be called by its true name. At 11:45 a.m., I arrived at the hospital, not sneaking in, not bowing my head. Maya ran over and hugged me tightly. You look better than the other day. I'm still all over the place. I exhaled softly, but at least I don't want to hide anymore. That afternoon, I met again with Heather. The situation is improving, she said. Now it's time for us to start step 2 formal legal dialogue. I frowned. You mean going to court? Maybe not. But we will present a number, a fair settlement offer along with a clear message that if they refuse, we won't hesitate to let the truth be known. I nodded. What's the number? We'll calculate it, including the car, the contributions, the damage to your reputation, legal costs. She paused and looked at me. Haley, this is the moment you reclaim your own worth, not just in money, but in recognition. That night, I stood in front of the mirror for a long time. No makeup, no smile, just staring into my own eyes. No longer lost. I had not collapsed. I had not become like them. I am Haley Morgan, and I know exactly what I have been through. I wrote another letter. I didn't send it. I just left it there, next to my desk. The first line read, I forgive. Not because my parents deserve it, but because I deserve peace. Monday morning, Heather called me from her office. It's time to send the settlement proposal, she said. I want you to review everything one last time before I sign on your behalf. I sat by the window, holding the file she had sent me the day before. I knew exactly what I was about to read, but as my eyes moved over each figure, I still felt a cold shiver run straight down my spine. $38,500. That was the total loss, all neatly calculated into 3 pages. Value of the car that was illegally sold $12,000. The money I had contributed to the family over 6 years, $24,000. Household bills, repairs, and supplies, $2,500. There is one blank section with no assigned value: loss of reputation, mental well-being, and professional credibility. I stopped at that last item, not because it lacked a number, but because it named exactly the part I had lost the most. I remembered myself standing in the clinic, just after being called in over that anonymous complaint. That brief moment when everything I had quietly built was nearly buried alive by a single lie, it has never left me, even after I was cleared. Valerie was sitting at the kitchen table, peeling an apple. "Are you done?" she asked. I nodded, still gripping the proposal tightly in my hand. "I've read it all. And no, I don't want to add or remove anything. I just want it sent, clear and simple, whether they agree or not." "We sent the email at exactly 10:42 a.m., Heather reminded me. "Don't expect a gracious response. But maybe their silence will still be a kind of acknowledgement." I nodded. That night, I stepped out onto the balcony, looking at the warm yellow lights spilling from the neighbors' houses. Spring in Boulder was still cold, but my heart had stopped trembling. For the first time in months, I made myself a cup of hot cocoa, not to soothe my sadness, but to savor. I had made it here. Not perfectly, but I was still whole. I was still me. The next day, Heather forwarded me a short email from Ronald's side. "My client declines the settlement offer. However, he wishes to meet in person to discuss, without legal counsel present, if possible." I finished reading and sat still. No anger. No surprise. I called Heather. "I don't want to go alone, and I won't let you go alone." She replied, "We'll go together, but only to observe. If they want a conversation, at the very least, there will be a witness. No more risks." That evening, I sat on my bed and opened the notebook I had filled during the darkest days. I turned to the very last blank page. I wrote a single line. In a calm hand, I don't need them to admit fault. I need to stop feeling guilty for telling the truth. I closed the notebook and set it down on my nightstand. I didn't want the upcoming meeting to bring anything good. I only hoped I'd be calm enough to face it without letting anger take the lead. I walked into the coffee shop with Heather beside me, my palms damp with sweat. Not out of fear, but because my body still remembered, every time I sat across from Ronald, I would shrink inside. Today, I wanted to make sure that wouldn't happen again. Ronald had chosen a corner table, far from the window, where the light only illuminated half of his face. Same old shirt, shoes polished to a shine, a cup of black coffee without sugar in front of him. When he saw me, he didn't stand up, just looked. That look that had silenced me for years now is just a faded mirror. I sat down. Heather sat next to me, silent, opening her notebook. Ronald gave a slight nod. "I didn't call a lawyer, because this is still family, and I don't want to turn it into some public spectacle." I didn't respond, just held his gaze, no flinching. He went on. "Haley, I'm not denying you're angry. You feel hurt. But the way you've chosen to handle it, lawsuits, calculations, humiliating family, it goes far beyond what's necessary." I tightened my hand slightly, but my voice didn't shake. "I'm not doing this to humiliate anyone. I'm doing this to end a cycle, a kind of silence that gets exploited, a kind of sacrifice taken for granted." Ronald let out a quiet laugh without sound. "You see everything in black and white. Haley, in this world, not everyone does things out of malice. I only did what was necessary to keep the family standing. And that family," I said slowly, "stood on the back of a daughter you once taught that silence was a virtue." Heather leaned forward. "We're not here to listen to more excuses. Mr. Morgan, the purpose of this meeting is to see whether you intend to handle this quietly or take it to court." Ronald took a deep breath and leaned back in his chair. "I will not sign anything called compensation. I don't owe anything. If the girl feels insulted, then I apologize. But that doesn't mean I'm guilty." I smiled. Not out of satisfaction, but because what I'd been waiting for was now clear. Not an admission, but a clear refusal. I turned to Heather and gave her a slight nod. Then I looked straight at Ronald one last time. I don't need you to agree with me. I just need to no longer agree with the way you live. And that is the first freedom I've ever had in my life. I stood up. Ronald called after me, "Haley, you're breaking this house apart just to save face for yourself." I turned back. My voice was low but steady. "No. I'm holding on to the last part of me you haven't damaged yet." We left the shop. Heather didn't say a word the entire way back. She didn't need to. Sometimes silence itself is a form of acknowledgement, a kind of respect. That night, I folded all the case files into a hard folder, not to lock it away, but to keep it ready. I still don't know how it will end. But I do know this, whether I win or lose, I've done the right thing. I looked straight at the man who had made me shrink into silence, and I didn't tremble anymore. The call from the law office came at 8:17 a.m. I was brushing my hair, getting ready for my shift. Heather didn't beat around the bush. "Ronald has been spreading false information about you. We just received screenshots from a relative in the family. The information has been shared with at least 3 people, including hospital staff." I froze, the comb slipping from my hand and hitting the table. This time, is it real evidence crystal clear? Your name, the fabricated statements, everything. We have enough to proceed with a formal lawsuit. I sat down on the edge of my bed, my hands still trembling, not from shock, but because, finally, he had pushed everything past the limit. Ronald was no longer just a misguided father. He had become someone who deliberately hurt others to protect his own arrogance. I called Heather back. "Do it," I said. "File it. Officially." She wasn't surprised. She only replied simply, "We've already prepared the paperwork. It will be filed today." By the afternoon, everything had been done. Heather sent me a copy of the lawsuit defamation, falsifying records, misappropriation of property, and prolonged emotional distress. A stack of papers nearly 30 pages thick. Not a single line of emotion. Only facts. Only numbers. Only the things no one in my family had ever dared to call by their real names. That evening, Jason called. His voice was shaky. "Dad just got the papers from the court. Mom's been locked in her room since this afternoon. She hasn't eaten anything." I stayed silent. You really took them to court?" "Yes." "Isn't there another way, Jason?" I said, not angry, just tired. I've chosen the other way for the past 20 years, and they have never chosen any way except to push me down lower and lower. There was no answer on the other end. After a long pause, he asked, "Are you still my sister?" I replied without hesitation, "If you expect me to stay silent just to keep the title of being your sister, then no. But if you want to know what it means to be someone who can stand up for herself, then I'm still here." The next day, I was called into the hospital's conference room. I walked in, keeping my back straight. Inside were the head of HR and the head nurse. "We know about everything, and we're sorry we ever questioned you," the HR director said. "Now, it's clear who's been telling the truth." The head nurse handed me an envelope. "Official offer, you'll be promoted to shift coordinator, starting next month." I took the envelope, my hands trembling slightly. This time, not from fear, but because the recognition came at exactly the right moment. That evening, I went back to my room, opened the lawsuit folder, and slipped a new piece of paper inside the promotion letter. I want to remind myself that I am worthy not because anyone gave it to me, but because I kept it for myself. But then I flipped back to the very first page of the file. The first line was the name Ronald Morgan, the man I once called my father, the man who drove me to school on my first day, bought me my first pair of nursing shoes, and held my hand when Mom died. I placed my hand on that name. I didn't cry. But one question echoed in my mind. I can win this lawsuit. But can I ever win against the emptiness of losing something I once hoped would be family? The promotion confirmation letter was still on the table, right next to the lawsuit file. On one side was recognition. On the other hand, confrontation. I looked at both as if I had to choose. But I knew I couldn't choose, because both were real. Both were me. 3 days after the lawsuit was filed, I received a call from an unfamiliar number. I didn't answer. The voicemail contained only 2 lines: I want to see you. One last time. Not to argue, just to say something I've never said before. Ronald. I didn't respond right away. I read it over and over. Not because I was hoping, but because I was afraid. I might still be hoping. Valerie noticed me staring at my phone the entire evening. Call if you want to, she said, but only if you're sure you're strong enough not to be pulled back in. I nodded, but my heart didn't nod along. My heart went still. The next morning, I called back. His voice was hoarse and tired. Haley, I'm not going to apologize just to get you to drop the lawsuit. That is already out of my hands. No, it's out of your control, but not out of your will. He sighed. Maybe you're right. I'm not here to argue anymore. I just want to give you back a few things. We agreed to meet at the parking lot behind the public library, a neutral place, free from memories. Heather didn't come with me. This time, I went alone. Not because I trusted him, but because I knew I had nothing left to lose to him anymore. Ronald arrived first. He was holding a small wooden box. I recognized it was my mother's keepsake box, the one I thought had been lost. He didn't say a word. He just set the box on the stone table between us. It's your mother's. It should have been yours a long time ago. I opened it. Inside was an old photograph. Mom was holding me, her hair blowing in the wind. I was about 7 years old, grinning ear to ear. Beneath it was a small notebook with a peeling cover. I recognized Mom's handwriting. I took a deep breath. Thank you. Haley, I was wrong. Not because I took your car, not because I made you pay money, but because I made you believe your worth was in your obedience. I looked at him. You realize that now? It's too late. I know. He didn't cry. I didn't either. But something had closed, not to heal, but to end. That night, I sat alone, reading every line in Mom's notebook. Her handwriting was still soft and gentle. The last line read, "My dear daughter, there are things you'll have to claim on your own. But when you stand firm, you'll understand why I always believed you didn't need someone to hold you up forever." I closed the notebook. No tears. Just one thought echoing in my head. I'm standing firm now. Mom. And I'm moving forward, without carrying the burden anymore. 2 months after my last meeting with Ronald, I moved into my new place, a small 3rd-floor apartment facing the sun near a bus stop, and only a 10-minute walk from the hospital. I didn't bring much. Just a few sets of clothes, a pothos plant, my mother's old notebook, and the lessons I've carried with me from a lifetime of being his daughter. Every morning, I get up at 6:10 a.m., make coffee, Open the balcony door. There's no more slamming of the old door, no more prying eyes every time I come home late from work, only the air and the silence. And for the first time in my life, I feel like I deserve it. The official trial hasn't taken place yet, but Heather says Ronald's side has already hinted at renegotiating a settlement this time with a considerable concession. I told her I would think about it, not because I was wavering, but because I no longer see this as a fight for survival. I had already won the moment I dared to walk out of the Morgans' house without carrying the feeling that I was wrong. On Saturday night, Jason stopped by. He brought hot coffee and 2 sandwiches. He sat down on the balcony chair like an old habit, but this time, he quietly looked around my small apartment as if he was seeing something that, for the first time, was allowed to exist. "Mom still hasn't talked to you," Jason said. "But you know, I don't think she's mad at you anymore. It's just, she doesn't know where to start." I nodded. Some things don't need to start again. They just need to end in the right place. On my first day working as a shift coordinator, I walked into the meeting room with the shift schedule in my hand. My coworkers greeted me with smiles for the first time, without pity or curiosity in them. A young nurse leaned toward me and whispered, "I've heard about what happened to you. I think you're very brave." I simply replied, "No. I was just tired of staying silent for too long." That night, I rearranged my desk to the spot where I keep my mother's photo and the notebook she left me. I opened to the middle page. The ink had faded over the years. "If one day you must leave, remember leaving is for living, not for revenge." I read it over and over, and for the first time, I understood it completely. I used to think that I could only forgive when they admitted their mistakes. But the truth is, I don't need their remorse to let go. I only need to know that I no longer let the pain define who I am. If you've ever been like me, hurt by your own family, forcing yourself to be the good one in a home that no longer feels safe, thinking silence was the only way to keep the family bond, then please remember this. You are not wrong for standing up. You are not bad for choosing to walk away, and you are certainly not ungrateful for saving yourself. Thank you for staying with me until the very last page of this journey. If this story touched you, please comment, share, or subscribe to Revenge Mark so we can continue telling the voices that have long been buried. Because somewhere out there, there are still many Haleys, just waiting for a small light to know they are no longer alone in the dark.